Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, people of the state, hello. Shut the fuck up and let them talk. People, I feel like we're facing an epidemic right now. An epidemic that not too many people are aware of because it's become so integrally involved in the way that we live every single day in our lives. And it's not to say that it's necessarily a bad thing, but judging from the title, which I figured you might have guessed what it might be about, this has something to do with the word, or shall I say, two words: approval and validation. As somebody who is a creative and works with artists as a creative director, up-and-coming music video director, and has worked behind the scenes on some pretty big sets, music video related specifically for Larry June, Bino, Blast, and some pretty big YouTubers as well, I can say that the need for approval and validation, not just by the artists, I won't even say by the artists themselves, but by a lot of people that are not in the position that they're in, by the people that maybe surround those types, and just people in general. And you look on social media and see the comments, the need for approval and validation runs sky high. The need for a like, the need for a share, the need for all of it. And the difference between the people who are very successful at what they do, especially as, as a filmmaker or as a creative in general, which is what this channel is dedicated to help people out and get through whatever mental blocks that might be holding them back. Besides the point, the difference between those who have actually made it and those who are stuck in the same place, running in the same circles, in the same loops over and over and over again, is that they value their internal voice much more than the people surrounding them, much more than what the external is reflecting back to them. And as an artist myself, this is something that I also struggled with, but coming to a realization through, dedicated research and trial and error, I've come to realize that the more power that we give in our internal voice, the more power that we give to ourselves, the less influence or swayed we can be by the people that's surrounding us. And I would say that that's one of the key points that is very, very, very important when it comes to just developing yourself as an artist in general, developing yourself as a creative, and making those breakthroughs that you've been hoping to achieve. And I feel like once that realization and once that understanding really becomes understood, then that's when things can really take off. That's when the ideas can start flowing a lot more consistently, because you're not so categorized and focused on the opinions that others may have. Not to say it's not important, but it can't be everything. It can't be the 100% and you be like the less than 1%. You know what I'm saying? It needs to be something opposite of that. So in this video, we're going to focus on how we can use approval and validation in a way that helps us build our inner voice by approving of ourselves and validating ourselves first, so that we can make better projects and make more progress with the work that we're doing. So by the end of this, I will have explained it. I will have showed my process, which I call the 4-step process, and we'll give a little bit of advice and insight on how to maintain that inner voice that can really help you really break through and make it to the next level when it comes to anything creative wise. All right. My name is Young Waves. I was finna drop the government, but not yet. And let's get started. Okay, so let's take it back a couple of thousand years where human beings basically were in a much more survival state than where we are today. The reason why people approve or they value approval and validation so much isn't necessarily because it's a trend or because of social media. All that's really doing is bringing back or bringing out something that's been within us for a very long time. I mean, think back when you were in school, elementary school, middle school, doesn't matter, or even being back at home. What's the one thing that we all felt like we needed? It's the one thing that gave us a lot of positive energy, that gave us a lot of happiness and joy. Yeah, sure, it could have been your video games. It could have been, I don't know, receiving a gift. It could have been anything. It could have been going on a trip or whatever. But beneath the surface, it's one of these two things that we mentioned before, validation or approval. Because as babies, we rely on the approval from our parents to feel like we're safe. And if we didn't have that, then when we got in trouble, then it felt like the end of the world. It felt like death. And because of those early experiences, it's already began to taught us to value the opinions of those outside of us much more than our own. Like, because we aren't taught to, at least in the US, we aren't taught to value our own voice as much. Like, sure, it's become much more of a trend and much more of a trending topic now, but if we're going back to the roots, that's something that we didn't necessarily like give ourselves. It's something that we weren't taught in school. We weren't, unless we had somebody pull us to the side and tell us that, chances of that were extremely low, which is why it's become such a big thing now for us to have our own inner voice. But to take it really, really, really back, because those are the circumstances that we're born into, let's have a little history lesson here. So thousands and thousands of years ago, human beings were in a much more survivalistic state. It was my point earlier, finally circling back to it. We were in a much more survivalistic state where everybody lived in tribes. We're talking about ancient Africa, Japan, China. A lot of people lived in like villages, and the only way to survive was to stick together. And to stick together with your group, with your clan, with your people, what do you think was one of the requirements? Approval, validation. We needed those things in order to feel safe around each other so that we can survive onto the next day and make progress. Because if that were not the case, if we were not approved of, or if we like happened to do something that caused everybody to turn on us, then like once you get kicked out of the clique, you're on your own, bro. And back then, during those times, the chances of survival were much slimmer than what they are like if the same thing were to happen today, because we have all the resources, access, and tools to things that didn't even exist back then. And back then you had to deal with like harsher weather conditions, and without like I won't say harsher weather conditions, you had to deal with weather conditions that we didn't like have a structure to keep us safe from. Predators, for sure. And like shit, God forbid you get injured, you're fucking cooked, bro. I'm not even gonna lie, like that's a wrap. Like you're done. So if we weren't approved of back then best believe it was pretty much a guaranteed death sentence. And it's because of that programming and that wiring and that understanding, it became a part of our evolutionary psychology. Like as we progressed as human beings, those innate things were consistently instilled in us from one generation to the next. And the reliance on validation and approval became so ingrained in our DNA, it basically became a muscle memory that we were installed with at birth. So it's not your fault that you're putting other people's opinions above your own. It's just a muscle that you didn't really recognize that you had. But fortunately, there is a way to have that not be as influential as it once was before, to where you can make your own decisions from your own state of approval and validation at a much easier rate than how it was programmed for you to be before. So think of it like this. Because of those circumstances and because of the things that we've been through, to where we've consistently relied on approval, it basically became like a core that was installed within us. But also, it's the negative moments that we faced upcoming or coming up that really like sealed the deal when it came to those aspects influencing our decisions. So let me just tell you like this, like, if you ever had any really intense experiences growing up where you weren't approved of, it kind of created these seeds of fear. It could be the fear of disapproval, the fear of being seen, the fear of being judged, like, and the list can go on, but it's because of those things that we have gone through that's really like hit the nail on the head when it comes to being swayed. So because of that, because of those negatively intense experiences, because of those traumatic events, our minds create a safety net, a defense mechanism to prevent that from happening again. So as a creative, as an artist, like when we're working on something and we're getting a lot of mental blocks, or we're getting a lot of what is it called? Creative blocks. It's essentially a defense mechanism that was innately built as a response to the traumatic event that has happened in the past, so that we don't get disapproved of again. So if you feel like you're being blocked, it's not your fault. It's literally trauma that's still being ran through, like, that's like been running in your mind all this time, that's kept you from getting to the next place because you were afraid of a bad circumstance happening. It's all a creative block really is. And the beautiful thing about it is that it's very easily solvable. So this is where we're going to get into the 4-step process that I use personally. That's helped me a lot when it comes to making progress, or just even completing projects with much more ease and less tension compared to before. Because for me, bro, like, I've worked on music videos that took me months to do when it could have taken me a couple of weeks, because I was so afraid of what the fuck was going to happen if I decided to truly express myself, because I was bullied for being myself when I was in school. I'm not gonna lie, like, I was labeled as the weird one. Like, I was reserved and quiet, but like, if I ever expressed myself, like, shit, like, it wasn't the most pleasant experience. I'm not gonna lie to you. But it's because of those experiences that I faced personally, after accumulating a lot of research and going into understanding why blocks happen in the first place. This is a process that kind of came about as a result of trial and error, and tapping in with different teachers, tapping in with different like fields of education, books, and this is what gave me the best results. So hopefully this will work for you too. Actually, nah, it's gonna work for you too. So let's get into it. Okay. All right, so step 1 of the 4-step process is we need to identify what the particular circumstance was that kind of traumatized you from fully expressing yourself or being yourself, or feeling like you needed to rely on the validation of other people instead of your own inner voice. So think back to a moment where maybe somebody told you that you weren't good enough. Somebody disapproved you of whatever idea that you had, and you took it really, really, really personally. So the beautiful thing about that is that whenever we go through a traumatic experience, or an experience that is really negative, we don't fully process it. we actually only process about like, what is it, about like 50%? Like, it's not fully there. There's a book, I forgot the name of the author, but it was called Waking the Tiger and Healing Trauma. And it described the aspects of how trauma really influences our body, and that we don't actually fully process it all the way. Like sure, we experience it, but we still hold on to it. So because that this is something that is not fully processed, we actually have the opportunity to process it. So whenever like we get flashbacks or like negative like memories that pop back up, it's actually not a bad thing or something for you to run away from. It's actually a signal for you to finish fully processing it so you can finish fully processing what that was, to the point to where it doesn't have that strain on you anymore, because we don't tend to hold on to positive things like that. Like, we let that go hella easy, but negative is like, oh shit, I'm stuck with that. But let something positive happen, let something good happen, and then immediately it just fades away. So if it's like that for something good that we experience, why the fuck can't it be like that for something negative? Evolutionary psychology is one of the reasons why, but like the fact that it's possible on one side means that it's also possible on the other side, because all truths are half truths. So where was I? What was I doing? Oh, okay. So we need to identify what that traumatic experience was, and then identify what fear or what emotion has surmounted from that. So step one, find what that traumatic memory was, whatever you went through. Step two is we're going to fully complete the processing of it. We're going to fully complete it. So that means we're going to have to re-experience it in our minds. But it's okay. It's okay. I know it sounds intimidating. I know it sounds scary. But I promise you, this is something that is completely life-changing, because you're giving yourself more power over the circumstance. You're giving yourself the chance to say, like, nah, this isn't running me no more. You know what I mean? If I want to get into something a little bit more psychological or spiritual, you're basically rewiring your subconscious mind. So once you have an understanding that because our subconscious minds are completely like neutral, it's basically the gateway between us and our higher selves, and is something that is pretty much like a blind intelligence. It doesn't know the difference between something that's real and something that's in your imagination. So we can use our imaginations to change what we feel is real. I'm going to get into that soon, though. So once we find a quiet space, get into a relaxed space, a relaxed state. I don't give a fuck if it takes like 5, 10, 20 minutes, an hour. Like, bro, as long as it fucking takes. As long as it fucking takes to get into a place to where your muscles are relaxed and you feeling calm. We're gonna dive back into whatever that particular circumstance and experience was, and we're gonna finally finish processing that shit. All right. So replay that moment in your mind, but feel the emotions. Feel it all the way. Feel it all the way, because we're finally giving our nervous system a chance to catch up with it. So once we feel it all the way, eventually it's going to get to a point to where that negative charge starts dissipating and it doesn't become as strong and influential on us anymore. What we're doing now is the neutralizing process. So once we get into a place to where everything feels neutral, to where the negativity doesn't feel as strong anymore, to where the strain feels cool, where you feel a little relief and it doesn't feel as like powerful anymore, then we can come out of that. So that's step 2. We're going to neutralize it. Step 3 is revising it. So give yourself a couple minutes after the fact, after you neutralized whatever that traumatic experience was. So you give your chance, so you give your mind a chance to kind of like get a little mental clarity back and reset. When you feel like you're at a point to where you can think clearly, then that's when we actually start the revision process. Revising is basically using our imagination and rewriting our subconscious definition of what we went through. Because we have a negative association on certain actions and certain things that we do from the negative experience that we had, it also means that the opposite is true. That means that we can also rewire it to be something that's completely positive, and then our definition turns into something positive, which makes it easier for us to make progress when it comes to the work that we're doing, where we can make it easier for us to give ourselves the approval that we were looking for. So in order to revise and completely turn things around and seal the deal, what you want to do is determine whatever that negative thing was, give it an outcome that you would have actually liked to happen. So per se, for an example, say you've given a speech, you've given it to in front of your classmates and it didn't go well. Change it to you receiving a standing ovation and you were getting a lot of positive reviews for it, and extract that to whatever it was that you feel like, or whatever that traumatic like event was for you. And that's where we can start to plant the seeds of change, and where it's easier for us to ease into trusting ourselves much more than where it was before. So it's the same thing as step 2, get into a calm, relaxed state, find somewhere quiet, and start looping the new memory over and over and over again. Start looping the new outcome over and over and over again, and feel the emotions from it, because we're planting the emotional seeds, which is going to influence our nervous system, and which is going to rewire our minds in a way that aligns us more with positivity than negativity, that aligns us more with conviction rather than fear. And once you feel like your brain, your mind has gotten to a place where it starts straining out, then that means that like your deeper self is starting to accept it. So this is something that you can come back to if necessary, but I wouldn't overdo it, because once you start feeling strained and you feel like you can't do it anymore, don't push it, bro, because you're only going to tire yourself out and be wasting energy. I've got fucking hair in my mouth. So after you complete that process, then that's pretty much it. Maintaining it is honestly not that difficult. You just have to be okay with if certain things don't go your way, because if things go left, if people still start talking shit, just remember who the fuck you are, respectfully. But it's going to feel like a reflex and a muscle that you're kind of rebuilding from the ground up. Just remember, like, say some mental affirmations to yourself that, like, whatever it is that you're going through, that those like experiences, just say in your head like, oh, that's the old me trying to get me to go back. That's literally a good ass counter that could help you get through whatever those particular circumstances were. So once you like feel like you've gone to, or once you feel like you've really like done this revision process a little while and it's starting to get easier, then it'll naturally get easier for you to rely on your inner voice much more and not need the approval of like a lot of things. I mean, I'm not saying like be an asshole or go commit crimes and shit like that. This is just purely for the sake of being more comfortable and confident in yourself. So yeah, anyways, that's all for today. And shit, I'll just see you on the next one.